But I do think, like, for Julio, there was a bottoming out point last season where everything he had done and everything he had done on his own and the work he had done in the offseason just wasn't working.
Seattle Times, Ryan Divish. We're just all charged up today because we're covering two of the three most frustrating fan bases in Major League Baseball right now, or frustrating organizations, not fan bases. But Ryan, how you doing, man?
I'm good. I'm good. Just
We
living the
haven't
dream
talked in a
here
minute.
in Havre, Montana, getting ready to go to spring training
Mm.
tomorrow. It's minus 25
Oh,
here. Spring training is
minus
a
25 here.
grind, though, man. Like, it is. It's every day, but I'm looking forward to it. It's really easy this year with the Mariners. I know all the players on the team. They didn't add anybody new, so I don't have to. I don't have to. It's all easy.
I just had the joke. I was ready to go. And then I only
Oh,
have
there are so
one. So
many
then I'm
things we
like, all
could.
right, I have nothing else to say. You know all the players
Listen,
already. So let's
before
Let's hit the
before we even
storyline.
dig
It's
in,
gonna be
I just
fun.
gotta no. I gotta ask before we even hit the storylines, and I think one of them. This isn't even in there, but they're a World Series winner. That's why they didn't add anybody. We heard the GM say it. They're World Series ready, Ryan. So now we'll hit the storylines.
Just broke. We'll get right to the big stuff at the top. And would the M's eventually deal a starter for a bat? Obviously, they haven't done it up to this point. Let's make spring summer for Julio Rodriguez and see if he can figure out the beginning of the season. And also for this Seattle team, we'll get to their flashy outfield, which they've done a nice job building up. Randy Rosarena trade last year, picked up Victor Robles, signed him to an extension. He was good for them down the stretch. And then the classic 54% chance. Will they tilt towards the top of that number or the bottom where you just miss the postseason, which has been a pretty sexy thing for the front office to do lately? All right, here we go. Team's broke, and they fixed it by bringing back the same team. Polanco signs back, Solano for Josh Rojas, and there's your Mariners offseason. Your thoughts?
It was less active than I thought. I figured they would do something more than they did. I think their intention was to do something more than they did. But when you only have $15 million of payroll and payroll flexibility, you just don't have a lot to do. They they looked at signing Carlos Santana. They felt like he would be great fit at first base, kind of a platoon with Luke Raley, good leader in the clubhouse. He's been a pretty good mentor for Julio Rodriguez. But the pull of going back to Cleveland, which not many people say in their lives, but the pull of going back to Cleveland, to the place where it started his career, was more important for Carlos than maybe a little bit more money and a second year. So they kind of pivoted, went to Donovan Solano, who is a nice pickup. Don't get me wrong; he's a nice pickup if you have a finished product as a team. But when you have questions at second base, third base, first base, that's just not enough. Now they go out and get Polanco, bring him back. They're hoping for a bounce back. But, I mean, Jerry Dipoto was kind of hamstrung with the minimal amount of payroll flexibility provided by ownership. And, they really didn't find any trades for their prospects. I think they felt like they were going to be able to move some of their prospects to get a major league hitter. It just didn't happen because, more teams believe they can compete than ever before. So you really only have the White Sox and Marlins as teams that are selling off pieces. Obviously, the Rockies should be, but they don't even know what they're doing. So you've got maybe three teams that were in a position where they might value prospects over major league talent, but all the major league talent on those two teams is gone. So they just couldn't find a way to make a trade work and for their prospects. And with $15 million, I mean, that doesn't buy you a lot. It's like going to a convenience store with $1. What does it buy you anymore?
Maybe like a half a Snickers bar or something. Maybe a water, like the generic water. Can Julio start hot? Because if he starts hot, like right out of the gate, April, right away, he could be an MVP.
Yeah, I mean, it's important. He doesn't even have to start out hot. He just has to start off something better than he's been, like each of the last 3 years. I mean, the first year he was a rookie, so you cut him some slack, and he had a bunch of calls, a lot of called third strikes on him that didn't go his way. We'd written stories about kind of the rookie treatment with the strike zone. But the last 2 years, he's come in with the intention of starting off hot and didn't. And I think once you get through the first week and you haven't done maybe what you were expecting, then you start to chase and it just builds. And really last year, it was more than just April and May. It was almost through the All-Star break. In 2023, he was a little bit better after June, and then he got really hot in July, and then August was absurd. But it took him so long to get going last year, that it's a problem. They have to find a way. I think he's in a better spot to handle it. I think he's in a better spot mentally, physically. I think, what he did in the last 6 weeks of the season with the influence of Edgar Martinez, getting them to refocus on driving the ball up the middle and to the right center gap and kind of getting away from, trying to yank the ball over the wall in left field was big. Increase the contact rate, and he makes such hard contact when he does hit it. Increase the contact rate a little bit more, and good things will happen. His approach was better with 2 strikes. His approach was better with runners in scoring position. I think that'll carry over. Last year he made some swing changes in the offseason that didn't help, and he couldn't get his rhythm and timing down early and all those things. And really, you can talk about what they didn't do in the offseason, which wasn't much. But if the team's going to be good, it's going to be based on whether or not Julio goes. Because when he's going, even at an above average rate, not even at his elite level, they're a lot different team.
Agreed. You know why he'll be better? Because they have Kevin Seitzer as a new hitting coach, and he hates home runs. So he's going to definitely tell him to hit singles to right and not hit home runs. Trust me. I know. I played for him for 2 years. Huge fan.
I think, but if he hits the ball, the thing with Julio is when he hits the ball hard to right field, it's a gap. Usually, it's not a single. And you know how it is with some of these hitters. They're going to listen to what they want to listen to, and they're going to do what they want to do. I mean, I think Brant Brown figured that out last year when he got with this team and tried to implement some stuff, and some of the guys were resistant to it. But I do think, like, for Julio, there was a bottoming out point last season where everything he had done and everything he had done on his own and the work he had done in the offseason just wasn't working. And you hit that rock bottom point as a superstar and you struggle more than you ever have in your career. You start listening to maybe the right people. And I think with Edgar, just the idea of hit the ball hard up the middle, use the field, and hit it hard, and don't focus on where you're hitting it hard to, I think is really important. And really, Edgar is still the overriding. He's the director of their hitting. I mean, they don't call him an offensive coordinator like they did with Brant Brown, but he's the director of their hitting philosophy. So I think, you'll see Edgar working with the guys that want to work with him, and then Seitzer's going to have to work with the rest of the guys as well.
Got it. All right. So what about the rest of the outfield? Can Edgar and Seitzer get Randy Arozarena to be less streaky? Because when he's hot, he's the hottest guy on the planet. But then when he's not, there's a lot of strikeouts, and a lot of people are standing there going, man, he's striking out a lot, right? But then you have Victor Robles, who came over last year and was a revelation for him. So is this outfield good enough with a good Julio, Arozarena, and Robles to make these Mariners good?
It certainly has the potential to be better than it's been. I mean, like, you look at from an athleticism standpoint, Randy had 20 bags last year stolen. Robles had over 30. Julio had over 30. Like, they can run the bases. They can go get it in the outfield. Randy can be a little indifferent in the outfield. But you are concerned. I mean, like, the concern is if you look at Randy's numbers, they've steadily trended lower each year. And that was, even when you're hitting in the AL East, which is a heck of a lot more hitter friendly than the AL West. So there is some concern there. The swing and miss numbers are a little bit higher. And Robles, for 600 games of his MLB career, was kind of a disappointment. And then he gets to Seattle and the new start. And I think under Scott Servais the previous manager kind of let him just be who he is. I think Davey Martinez got tired of who Victor Robles was for much of his time in DC, but like Servais kind of let him go and he flourished. But is he going to be the guy that hit 330 for 60 some games, or is he going to be the guy that was like a 227 hitter with low OBP and lots of base running mistakes and all that stuff that he was with DC? So I think there's a lot of questions about whether or not this outfield is good. Like, on paper and what you've seen in the last 6 weeks, yeah, it looks really talented, but whether or not there's some consistency for the course of a season remains to be seen.
Obviously, we talk about 54% chance of making the playoffs every year. It can't not be brought up. But how much wider is this window open with this elite rotation, the best rotation in baseball? And are they going to take advantage of it after they missed the wild card by one game last year, all the down that they had, and they missed it by one game with a rotation that could dominate the entire playoffs?
Yeah, I mean, like, you look at it and you wonder if they've gotten that much better, but you also think, well, is Mitch Garver going to be as bad as he was last year? Or is JP Crawford going to be as bad as he was last year? Those guys really struggled. And so maybe the bounce back will help them get over the top. But also, those guys, that rotation, they made more starts than any team in baseball. Like, that group of 5 guys, they all made more starts. Their rotation pitched more innings than any rotation in baseball, and they only use 7 starters. You in an era where very few guys go 200 innings, 30 starts, these guys all were up there at that level. And what you wonder is, will they be able to sustain that sort of consistency and that sort of health for an entire season again? George Kirby, Logan Gilbert did not miss a start. Bryce Miller did not miss a start. Brian Wu had some hamstring issue and some elbow stuff early, and Luis Castillo had a hamstring issue. I mean, like, they only used 2 other starters, Emerson Hancock and Jonathan Diaz. Like, that just doesn't happen in Major League Baseball anymore. But, if that were the case, if they were able to kind of maintain that, then I think the other pieces, if they have bounced back from the offense, and I think the big thing is their bullpen getting better, getting Matt Brash back, getting a healthy Gregory Santos, I think that makes them better than maybe a year ago.
All right, I got to ask you this, since we haven't really talked to you about this. They got rid of Scott Service, you mentioned him, brought in Dan Wilson. What's he going to bring to the table? I know we saw him down the stretch, and they played a little bit better down the stretch to get close to the wild card. But what's a full year or two of Dan Wilson going to look like in the Mariners dugout?
I don't know. I didn't think it looked that much different last year in those last 6 weeks. I mean, like, people sat there and said, oh, well, he wants to bunt more. They want to steal more. I think that was just reflective of the situations in the game. I do think, like, his belief in better 2-strike approach was more important. Maybe that's what transitions more. He's definitely a player's manager. I think last year he was very cautious in terms of what he wanted to say or what he wanted to do, because he liked Scott Service and he didn't want to kind of trash him. And, and he also didn't want to make a lot of waves. He just kind of wanted to see what they could do in those last 6 weeks and see if they could piece it together. But these guys this year, I think we'll see a little bit more. I think Dan, will kind of step forward and be a little bit more vocal. I do know, like, if you recall last year, Arozarena had an incident. I can't remember which team it was, just kind of, how he takes pitches and he got hit by a pitch and some stuff, and there was some jawing back and forth. I watched Dan Wilson pull him aside and have a very frank conversation with him about kind of how you handle things on the field and, not putting your teammates in a bad position to maybe take one in the back. And I think stuff like that we may see a little bit more, but from an overall scheme standpoint or philosophy standpoint, other than being better with 2 strikes, which I know Scott Service preached too, I don't think we'll see a lot, because it's essentially the same roster. I mean, they can't really set it up to play any differently than before. Maybe the pieces are a little healthier and they can run more, or maybe the pieces are a little healthier and they won't platoon as much. But from the overall standpoint, I mean, the GM and ostensibly Jerry Dipoto, they control so much of how the team is set up and how the team is going to play that, the manager is there to make sure that the culture and everything else is in a good place.
AKA the lineup is set every day by the front office. This is not one of those, maybe. This is, here's the lineup, put it up on the card.
I'm not going there. It's like 54% jokes. The next funny one I hear will be the first funny one, but like, no,
those are always funny, Ryan.
This is modern. I mean, but modern baseball anymore is so different about the lineup and lineup construction. But like, they are set up to have to platoon. They are set up at several positions. I know a lot of people hate that, but that's where their talent level is, and that's how they're playing. It is kind of strange to me that in so many ways, for a team that has a market and a fan base and a popularity as much as it does, that they try and operate like the Rays in terms of cost cutting and overall philosophy, when they could be something more than that. Nobody's asking them to be the Dodgers, and nobody says they have to be the Mets. But there is a different area that they can get to, a next level tier that they could get to in terms of investment into this team. I just think is lacking. And until that thinking changes and winning and making the postseason becomes more than a spoken priority, I don't see it changing from that point. And I don't even know that a fan base reacting negatively and not showing up would change it either.
Yeah, but
they got to be in on the Japanese guys, Ryan. How are they not in on? How are they not in on those guys? I mean, I was there when the Ichiro came over, right? And Sasaki, right? The splitter, the closer guy, right? He came
Kaz Sasaki,
Kaz Sasaki, right? I mean, I was there for those guys. That place was insane. Back when it was Safeco, right? I mean, Jojima, they were in on all the Japanese guys. Now they don't even bother. It's like, why?
Well, they tried with Roki. They didn't get an interview. They didn't get the second interview after their presentation. So, and that's kind of where they're at. I mean, the perception of the organization isn't great right now because they aren't winning. And if you're a hitter, you certainly don't want to go there because you hear about the horror stories of hitting there in April and May and in late September. And when you don't win and you don't do all these things and you're far from where a lot of places ball players live, you got to do something to change that perception, or you have to pay more to get these guys to come here. And I don't think that these guys are willing to do that. When they were willing, people can say what they want about the Robinson Cano contract, but for the first 5 years of that deal, he was pretty good and he lived up to the billing. And I remember when they signed Nelson Cruz to a 4-year deal for, I think, $58 million. Nobody else was willing to give Nelson Cruz that 4th year because, he's getting older and this and that. Well, you know what? He produced. He paid, they paid the extra money to get him in there and he produced. That's the mindset that they're going to have. I remember when the Nationals went out and everybody said it was an overpay for Jason Worth, and they said it was more than just the production number and the value that he would bring, and it wasn't that much later that they were playing in the playoffs consistently and they eventually got a ring. So I think, the investment into the team, there's different ways to do it, but at some point, the overall mindset has to be more about winning and what it takes to win. It's one thing to say it, but it's another thing to show it. And they've done very little to show that they're interested in winning at the highest levels.
Yeah, there have been so many corner infield bats available on the market, and they are just losing fans in droves right now. Do not look at replies on social media from Mariners fans for a playoff team. They are really trying their best not to get people to come to the ballpark despite having a good product. Anyway, Ryan, thanks for joining us, dude. Always great to have you. Appreciate you, and safe travels to Arizona soon, man.
Yeah, you guys, if you want to ever come up and do some ice fishing, just come on up. I'll get you a beanie and a snowmobile and everything.
I want to go moose hunting. You got to take me moose hunting.
Okay, we can do that.
Hey, everybody. Be sure to like and subscribe for more content.
We're back here every weekday, all year long, so do not miss an episode.
The videos are coming in all day. Here's another video you might enjoy.
Baseball the way it should be covered.